Weather is serious business, and in aviation, what you don't know can kill you. So let's take a closer look at two of the big names in weather, air masses and fronts. Let's begin with a couple of questions about air masses. First, how many types of air masses are there? And second, which of these impact the weather in the continental United States? Before we answer, let's define what an air mass is. According to the PHAC, an air mass is a large body of air that takes on the temperature and moisture characteristics of the source region. These source regions are places where the air hangs around for extended periods of time. Polar regions, tropical oceans, and dry deserts are all good birthplaces for air masses. Air masses are identified by their moisture and temperature properties. Each is identified with a two-character label. The first character identifies the relative moisture content. Continental air masses originate over land and contain relatively dry air. These are identified with the lowercase c. Maritime air masses originate over oceans and therefore contain moist air. These use a lowercase m. The second character identifies the relative temperature of the air mass, and the PHAC and the FAA Weather Handbook list three temperature categories. Arctic originates over the Arctic or Antarctic regions and is extremely cold. These are identified with a capital A. Polar originates over high-latitude land or water areas and contains cool to cold air. These are identified with a capital P. Tropical originates over low-latitude areas and contains warm air. These use a capital T. By combining the moisture and temperature categories, we can see that there should be 6 air mass types: Continental Arctic, Ca; Maritime Arctic, Ma; Continental Polar, Cp; Maritime Polar, Mp; Continental Tropical, Ct; and Maritime Tropical, Mt. However, if you're thinking the answer to our first question is 6, hold on a moment. One of these types, Maritime Arctic, doesn't exist. While air masses do form over the Arctic Ocean, the surface is largely covered with ice, and therefore any air masses that originate there would have the same moisture characteristics as Continental Arctic. And we now have the answer to our first question. The FAA weather documentation identifies 5 air masses. This leads directly to the answer to our second question. All 5 of those air mass types impact weather in the continental United States. During the winter, we can experience Continental Arctic from the far north. We see Continental Polar from Canada, Maritime Polar from the North Atlantic and the North Pacific, Continental Tropical from the Southwest United States, and Maritime Tropical from the Mid-Pacific, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean Sea. With all of these air masses hanging around, they will bump into each other. And when they do, the boundary layer or transition between them is known as a front. There are 4 types of frontal boundaries. Did you know there's a 5th type of boundary? We'll get to that in a minute. Let's start with the fronts. Each frontal type is identified by the temperature of the advancing air relative to the temperature of the air being replaced. Cold fronts occur when a mass of cold, dense, and stable air advances and replaces warmer air. These fronts typically travel the fastest, between 25 to 30 miles per hour, tend to be associated with the most violent frontal weather, and are identified on surface analysis charts by a blue chain of arrows that point in the direction the cold air is moving. Because the colder air is more dense, it slides under the warmer air, creating a wedge that not only pushes the warmer air out of the way, but lifts it as well. This lifting of the warmer air causes it to cool suddenly, forcing the creation of clouds. Prior to passage of a cold front, cirriform or towering cumulus clouds are usually present. During frontal passage, clouds will likely be cumulus or cumulonimbus. Depending on the intensity of the front, gusty winds, heavy rain showers, thunderstorms, and even tornadoes may be present. After the passage of the front, towering cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds will start to dissipate, along with any precipitation. Fast-moving cold fronts with steep frontal surfaces can create narrow bands of severe weather located along the leading edge of the boundary. Watch for continuous lines of thunderstorms, called squall lines, along these fronts. Because of their speed and intensity, squall lines are very dangerous to pilots. Warm fronts occur when relatively warm air advances to replace retreating cold air. These fronts typically move between 10 to 25 miles per hour and are represented on surface analysis charts by a chain of red half circles. The half circles point in the direction the front is moving. Because the warm air is less dense, it's forced up over the retreating wedge of the cooler air. This process is called overrunning. Because of this, the slope of a warm front is typically much more gradual than a cold front. In fact, the typical slope is around 300 kilometers horizontal for every 1 kilometer vertical. This means the top of the warm front can be several hundred miles ahead of the surface boundary, and it usually leads to widespread layered or stratiform clouds, poor visibility, and light to moderate precipitation. While upper air disturbances can lead to the formation of thunderstorms near a warm front, they're typically not as severe as those that accompany cold fronts. Occluded fronts occur when a faster moving cold front overtakes and undercuts a warm front. These fronts are shown on surface analysis charts as a magenta chain of alternating arrows and half circles, both pointing in the direction of frontal movement. The weather surrounding these fronts depends on the difference in the stability of the warm air and the temperature of the leading and trailing cold air masses. If the trailing cold air mass is colder than the leading cold air mass, this is called a cold front occlusion, and the FAA notes the results can be a mix of both cold and warm front weather. If the leading cold air mass is colder, it's known as a warm front occlusion. During warm front occlusions, the trailing cold air rides up over the leading cold air and further pushes up the warm air. If the warm air is unstable, the weather is likely to be more severe, including thunderstorms, rain, and fog. Finally, stationary fronts occur when the two adjacent air masses are of nearly equal intensity. These fronts are indicated by an alternating chain of blue arrows and red half circles pointing in opposite directions. The clouds and precipitation that typically form in the warm, rising air along the front is typically a mixture of what can be found in cold and warm fronts. However, because stationary fronts move so slowly, the weather can linger for days. So, those are the 4 frontal boundaries. Using what we've learned, fronts are relatively easy to identify on a weather chart, but how do you recognize them when you're in flight? Well, as you cross a front, you will experience 4 changes or discontinuities. They are a change in temperature, a change in wind speed, direction, or both, notable changes in atmospheric pressure, and a change in dew point, more specifically, a change in the difference between temperature and dew point. So, what's the 5th boundary type? It's called a dry line. A dry line marks the boundary between a moist air mass and a dry air mass. This boundary is shown on the map by a brown chain of open half circles. This boundary usually exists in the central and southern plain states and separates the moist air from the Gulf of Mexico from the dry desert air of the southwest states. Since dry air is more dense than moist air, the dry line forces the moist air upward as it moves east. Severe and sometimes tornadic thunderstorms can develop along or just east of a dry line. So there you go. We've explored the air masses that impact the continental United States and looked at the different boundaries that can occur when air masses bump into each other. Some final thoughts. First, if this video was helpful, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing. Second, please consider sending a tip using Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the description below, and even a small amount helps support these videos. Third, if you'd like a PDF of the information in this video, including many of the graphics, I've included a link in the description below. And finally, if you're looking for more flight training information, I would recommend watching this video next. As always, thank you for watching, fly safely, and I will see you next time.